So I've actually got some more upgrades for the TP22 that Jefe Airsoft sent to me to check out. He makes some incredible upgrade parts for the AAPO1 and a ton of custom AAPO1s if you want to check out his website or his channels. I'll link them in the description. But he asked if I was interested in testing some of his AAPO1 parts inside of the TP22 from Yusha, TTI, Navrich. They're all the same thing. And seeing if the AAPO1 parts are compatible or not. Some have been, some haven't been, but any of the ones that have been, I continue to make a video on, and then I'll use the other parts of my AAPO1. Today, what I would like to do is get into the hammer unit and upgrade all of the hammer springs that we can. So we're going to upgrade the hammer spring, the little disconnect spring, we're going to upgrade the mag release spring, and the stainless steel auto sear spring. So that'll be really cool. Let's go ahead and take this guy apart, pop the mag out, pull this guy down, pop it forward, and we don't need this for now. So I want to bring you through the whole journey. We're going to take all of these springs out and then even take a little thumbnail for this. Go ahead and pop this guy out. Now inside of the auto sear package, you're just going to get the auto sear spring. It is incredibly small, so don't lose it. We'll take a look at this guy now. I can already notice that this guy's got a much more aggressive angle than the standard AAPO1 auto sear, so I'm assuming that'll just make this guy so much stronger. And then inside this package, you're also going to receive the bolt catch or bolt release spring, but I already took that out because last episode, if you remember correctly, check it out in the top right corner, we installed the bolt release spring and the trigger bar spring. Now while I get these guys out, the ones that we are going to be installing, I want to let you know the reason that we upgrade springs in our gas blowbacks. So not only are the springs inside of our gas blowbacks usually not the highest of grade, however, they also wear in much quicker than they should. And what happens with that is, as they wear in, you could start to notice functionality issues, efficiency issues, excess wearing on parts. So going ahead and upgrading your springs to high quality springs can only increase the longevity of your replicas and increase the amount of time that those springs retain their springiness, which is exactly what we want. Now, first things first, what we have to do is remove both of these pins. You'll notice this pin is excessively long. That's because I actually run the Blackbeard kit from YMS Airsoft on my TP22, but I haven't reinstalled it just because it's going to be easier for me to make these videos for you guys. And if I recall, this pin comes out that direction. Perfect. Okay. Now be careful. This part is under spring tension. So when we go ahead and remove this, you're going to pull the trigger, remove this guy, and just don't lose that spring. We could throw this aside for now. So I recommend grabbing yourself maybe a pair of tweezers would be a good idea, or something long that you can get in there, and pull this guy out. Now I also forgot that we have one of these springs. So why don't we upgrade that guy as well? I believe it's that one right there. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You know, sometimes I make mistakes. So it should be the longer of the two. That looks like it. It's a little bit longer, so it may have a little bit extra force to it. So that's cool. Now let's take the hammer unit apart. So first, to take this guy apart, I think what I'll do is I'll bring you guys in a little bit closer, bring Jeff's logo in. So the entire thing, we have to get this large pin out first, and to do so, we're going to remove this little grub screw inside of the safety lever on the right side. Now be careful, because on this side of the safety lever, there is a spring with a pin right in here that allows it to lock into place and then unlock. So we need to be super duper careful when removing it. All we're going to do, set it into the safety mode. Then you can access that grub screw. That is too large. Let's go for something on the shorter end. And we'll start to unscrew. Now you could pop this end off, and then the entire pin pushes out from right to left. But again, like I said, there's a spring right here with a little metal nub, so you have to be super, super careful when removing it. Bang. You see that guy pop out right there? Let's try and get that out. Bingo. This guy is exactly what you don't want to lose. Put that aside, we're going to need that for later. Now we're going to go ahead and hold the hammer in place. We're going to actually pull this pin out all the way. There's probably a step I could have done first to make that easier. But we'll take our little wheel out, our hammer and our hammer spring. This guy, which I failed to remove earlier. Now we need to remove this guy. There's another pin we're going to have to get to. That's at the bottom. It pushes out from any direction. And that will remove this spring that we'll be replacing. And your disconnect, or your piece that connects to your trigger. And we'll get to the auto sear as well. All we have to do is, you see how it's got that larger side and then the thinner side? We're going to push it out from right to left. And make sure you keep a finger on this guy, because you do not want to lose the spring that's under it. We are going to be replacing it, but still, why lose it if you don't have to, you know? And you should be able to see the spring right in there. See that? Okay. And we have an empty hammer housing. The easiest thing for us to do is start with the auto sear. So there's your auto sear, and this is the orientation it's in. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got the spiral. Oh, we're magnetized to the spring. So it's got this spiral in it, and on the top of the spiral is the jutting edge that comes out at an aggressive angle. And on the bottom of the spiral that goes into the auto sear is the more straight edge of the auto sear. So the way we're going to install our new auto sear is in the exact orientation. It should sit like this. But what you'll notice, if you can get this guy to focus, is this one's got a much more aggressive angle to it. So it should increase the strength of the auto sear spring, and they look like they're relatively similar in diameter, so I don't see why that would be a problem. So what we're going to do is pull this guy off, toss it aside, we shouldn't need that again, and then place this guy in place like that. Now I imagine with that more aggressive angle it's going to be a little harder to install, but that's okay. The most important thing now that we're going to do is install it in this orientation with the auto sear up in the front on the right side like this. And this end of the spring has to sit on top of that ridge on the right. So we'll take it in our fingers like that, holding the spring in place. And it's going to sit just up in the front and latch over that wall. See that? See how it's latching over that wall? Apply some tension onto it. And then I'm going to try and show you. We'll reinsert that pin, small end in first, and work on pushing that guy all the way down in place. Bingo. And we are in place. Now, if you did everything correctly, you should see, dang, that is an aggressive spring, Jeff. The front of the auto sear should pry away from the hammer housing, and we should have spring tension. So hopefully that works inside of the TP22. We're going to test that out afterwards. Next, I've always found it easiest to attack both this piece, which is your gas release, and the hammer. So now you see with the hammer spring, which is the next one that we're going to be attacking. On the hammer, the smaller end of the spring is on the bottom, and then the jutting edge is on the top of the spiral. Small edge presses up against this wall up in here. Oops. And then the jutting edge points downwards to the bottom of the hammer. So what we're going to do is just mimic that entire thing, and you will once again see when installing that new spring how just insanely aggressive that angle is. And I am terrified, absolutely terrified to put this in, because it's already super hard to get in because the hammer is already super, adds a ton of tension on the spring. But with Jeff's springs, they have just so much more power to them with that aggressive arc, that aggressive edge. Now we'll have to grab that little bearing that we had and install that guy up in the top. See that? Now throw a finger over both of them. One from the top here, just past your auto sear. And you see how that guy latches up in the front? Just like that. Now we have to line up the back hole with this hole while keeping that hammer spring latched up in the back. I've always found it easiest to get something like a pin of some sort. So we'll get something on the far side just to hold it in place if possible. And then from this side, we have to work this pin on in, which is not easy. So I like to take the pin, hold it on this end, and then find something to anchor the hammer forward a little bit. Should make dropping the pin in place a little bit easier. Cool. Now you see how the pin's up in there? We have to back it out just enough so that there's no pin showing in between that little notch of the hammer, because we're going to need that space. So let's back it out just a little bit till it's just barely holding the hammer in place. And we're going to take this guy, the little gas router piece, and we're going to slot it in with the hammer in this orientation through that hole up there with this back piece right in between that crease of the hammer, and it should come right out the front. And honestly, it should just go with a little bit of force. If you kind of just push it in place and keep that pin in place as well. My hands get all greasy because of all the oil on the hammer unit. Put it in at this like angle. Helps to pry the hammer back a little. Bang. And you see how it's sitting in between the hammer piece and then out in the front? Now it had two holes on it. It had a hole on the bottom, which you can kind of still see, and a hole on the top. That hole on the top is where this pin is going to have to slot through, so we're going to go ahead, line it up, and begin pushing the pin through a little bit more, and you can wiggle it around in the back from this hole. Pull it up a little bit. Bang. Most important thing, just get the pin all the way through. Okay. Now we can go ahead and drop this little fella in place. And all we're going to do is slot it into that hole right here with the safety mechanism facing to the sky. Bring it down, push it in a little bit, and then drop that guy in place. This is the easiest way that I've found to do this. It's still not entirely safe, but there's really no easy way to go about it. Now what you have to do is slowly start to orientate it upwards and apply downwards pressure onto that nub. You can use a tool or something if you need. What I'm going to do is use the back end of this pair of tweezers because they're flat. We'll just take this guy. Do not lose this, but you're going to press it down and then rotate the safety mechanism downwards to get it to notch up into those little holes. I'll show you how that works now. Just go ahead and press this guy down. Do not lose your positioning. And it should sit in there and lock and unlock. That's how you know you did it correctly. Now again, set it into the upper orientation as far as it'll go, just like that. Take the other side, slide it onto the end, and then we'll go ahead and install that little grub screw that we removed before, just to make sure that hammer piece doesn't come out. You don't have to over tighten it, just enough. Perfect. And then this guy should tighten and untighten. You should have hammer tension. And then you should still have auto sear tension. That's how you know you're in the right place. I'm really excited to get this all installed. Now, we're going to attack that disconnector, the disconnect spring, and that totally flat pin. Orientate your hammer like this. We'll drop the disconnector in this orientation just on the right side. Now the most important thing is you set your disconnect spring, which looks to be, honestly, pretty much identical to the other one. This one doesn't have many changes to it. It's just a stronger, made of steel spring, so it should retain its strength for a longer period of time. We're going to first set it up in this orientation with the flat edge up against that nub on the left side. And before we do anything, just take the pin and place it through the upper hole. It should go through both the spring and the disconnect. Now you see this part of that spring, that hook? That hook is going to latch into the bottom of that gas router or the gas release. So what I always like to do when I go ahead and push this guy in is bring the hammer back, because it makes that gas piece loose, and then you should be able to just latch that guy up where it needs to go. It's a much more snug fit in comparison to the stock one. They don't want to bend it the wrong way. There it is. Boom. Just like that. And you can leave the hammer depressed. It doesn't need to release at all. But basically what happens is when you're working, the trigger pries down on this disconnect, it pushes it backwards, and that'll release the hammer mechanism. Perfect, just like that. Now, we're going to get to this guy. And then the replacement spring, which I said was just a tad bit longer than the stock spring. And it looks like the coils are slightly more compressed. So that should just add some more strength to that spring-loaded part. And something unique about this one, as opposed to the AAPO1, there's a nub on the bottom of it. So it makes it a little easier to install it. We are going to install this guy with the safety mechanism pointing upwards. Bring it in from the bottom. Should be able to wiggle it on in place. Whichever way you gotta do it. And then we'll put the spring in place. Now be careful, because when the hammer is down, this guy has tension on it and it wants to pry back out at you. We're gonna place that aside for now though, because next we want to upgrade the mag catch, or the mag release spring. Now this spring, not totally essential, but it will increase the strength needed to press in the mag release. So that's cool. And it should be super simple to get into. You see inside there how the long protruding end is on the left, and it kind of hooks into the side of the mag release. It should be as simple as prying it out of there. So I'm going to try and get this on film for you, but apply tension to the other side so it doesn't come about. You have to push it out and forward. Bingo. And you see how that released? Now we should be able to feed this guy all the way through and take it out. We're going to need to make sure we remember the orientation that it went in. And then we're just going to take this guy and pull it out. It sits in that notch, that little like crevice in there. So that's how we'll reinstall it. Let's take a look, see if it's just a stronger spring or if it's slightly different orientation. So it looks like it's pretty similar. Actually, this one, the stock spring, has more of an aggressive arc, which is not the same theme as most of the Jefe parts. This one's got a less aggressive arc, which is interesting, but it should retain more power than the stock spring. So I'm interested to see if this part makes it harder to press the button. So again, it's going to drop into the crevice, and make sure the small right side of that spring is inside of it as well. It's not protruding outwards. It needs to be inside of this wall. Now we'll take this guy, push it in with the thumb pad piece on the thumb side. Should feed it all the way through. Having a little bit of a hard time. There we are. Perfect. And now this part's always kind of difficult. We have to get that spring piece inside of that notch, right up on the left side. So we'll kind of come at it from the front. That was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Phenomenal. And there should be spring tension to that as well. Yeah, that's definitely that's much stronger. That's a much more aggressive mag release than the original one. Yeah, it's definitely a little extra work for the thumb, but that's good. That's what you want. That's more positive mag release. Okay, let's get the hammer unit installed. Again, like I said, make sure you keep a thumb over that spring, and you want to feed the trigger bar into the back end of the trigger, or in the back end of the hammer housing like that. It should take the trigger bar down with it, and then it should just slot back as far as it will go into the TP22. Well, that spring came undone, I think. Just be careful. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to release the hammer. I think if I release the hammer, it'll be easier to put that trigger spring in. So just go ahead, push this guy back. Boom. And it should allow this part to sit in without any added pressure. We'll just depress it again before we put the top on. Yeah, that's so much easier. Okay, so release the hammer before you put it in. Now, if you know it's installed correctly, you should two things. One, you see the inside wall of the grip and the inside wall of the hammer assembly, that should be flush. Both these holes should be completely see-through. And then when you pull the trigger, the disconnect back there should release. Now what we're going to do is reinstall both of our pins. So we'll take the excessively long pin that I have for my Blackbeard kit, and then our standard pin. And we're going to push them both in from the side. They shouldn't take added force. I actually can push them in with my fingers. And then I like to push this guy in from this side just because, again, like I said, we're going to put the Blackbeard kit back on at the end of this. And everything should be working the way that we want it to. Now, a good test to make sure it's functioning the correct way is to pull the trigger again. Like I said, the disconnect should be moving. So that's a good sign. Bring you guys back up a little bit. Okay, so good way to test that everything's functioning the way that we want it to. Pull the trigger, the disconnect should be moving. Hammer goes down. That's a much tighter hammer spring. Hammer should go down. If we pull it all the way, the auto sear drops. Pull the trigger, the auto sear shouldn't drop. Release the auto sear. There should be a click when we push that lever down, and then the hammer. Damn. Okay. Starting to feel more like a real steel. Okay, let's get this guy back on to the top. Bang. And make sure everything functions the way we want it to. So on semi, rack to slide, we should have a hammer drop. Damn. Okay. The trigger pull is much more aggressive. It's much tighter to break the wall of the trigger, from what I'm noticing. Yeah, much harder to break the wall of the trigger. And if we pull the trigger all the way down, pull the slide back, there should be trigger reset, and then break it again. If we go to full auto, we pull the trigger back, it should break. But when we pull the trigger and pull the slide back, there should be no reset. So it looks like everything's functioning the way we want to. Let's go ahead and test it out, fire off some shots. I'm going to fill this guy up with a little propane, and then we'll see if it fires the correct way. So we'll drop the mag in, pull the slide back. We're going to have to hold the bolt release down, and then... Okay, that has a little more kick than I thought it was going to. It flew out of my hand. Functions fine, and we'll test the full auto. Okay. So, it turns out, Jeff, that all of the hammer springs for the AAP01 work just fine, if not phenomenally, inside of the TP22. Thank you for sending me all these crazy upgrade parts. I hope you guys had fun. And if you want to pick these up, like I said, I'm going to link them down below. It will only increase the longevity and the reliability of your TP22. Everybody goes for the hop units. Everybody goes for the blowback housings. Everybody goes for the recoil springs. Focus on your hammer springs. Focus on all of your springs. The springs are like just the cherry on top to your upgrades. They're going to fix a lot of things for you. I've always sworn by adding upgraded springs to your replicas. I feel like they're not focused on enough. But thanks for tuning in. And that's not the last upgrade for this, so stay tuned.